Hello guys, welcome back. I'm gonna get straight into part 2, right? Let's jump to it. According to our agenda, we are done with part 1. We understood what scaffolding identity is using RCL Razor class library. So now we're gonna look at part 2, of which part 2 talks about the register page of SI, which is scaffolding identity. But I did promise that I need to show you how this you get started with this, right? So let me try to create another instance, new instance. Normally I don't do this, I don't work with another instance. But you create a new project and you're gonna look for web, right? And you're gonna choose MVC, the one that says here MVC, right? And you're gonna continue, and then you're gonna change this guy to be individual authentication in app. It's very important. .NET 7, I don't have .NET 8 yet, and you want to hit continue, right? And I'm just gonna say test, because I'm gonna get rid of it as soon as possible. All right, and then create. So this is how you start, right? So you first have to make sure that you have identity by ensuring that the authentication has been set to in-app, right? So you do have areas, like I said in a previous video. Please watch part 1 to understand this series of identity system. And then as you can see, identity and pages, but you do not have them. Although you can run this project and do what, and then let me show you. In fact, let's hit a run, right? So you don't see those pages like register login, they are there. It's just that you need to say, I want to override the behavior of those. This is the page that you would get by default. Yes, there is register. There we go. You see, that's how it is. In the previous part, which is part 1, in the previous video, part 1, we spoke about you can add external service providers, such as you can log in with Facebook on your web application, with a Gmail account, with your Microsoft account, with your Apple account, and so forth, right? You can do that. That's part of identity system. You can register if you want to. You can say, listen, resend email confirmation. All of this is baked into identity system. I just want to show you that you get this. But having to override the behavior, changing the UI, changing the functionality of the code behind it, that's your responsibility, because you have to override it. So with this guy, we are done. Now, how do you do that? You need to do right click on the project and say new scaffolding. And I need to confirm something. There's a version of Visual Studio. It's a preview one, right? Visual Studio preview. I'm not sure what happened to that functionality to add identity. Like it's like missing here. I know it's there, but it's missing. Like it's missing. So with that, I want to help you to point you to this. Let me do this. Close it. Let's go back to our original. There we go. But if you search scaffolding, there we go. They will give you instructions as to how you go about it. I just want to do that quickly. That you go from solution, right click on the project, add new scaffolded item, right? Like I said, I'm using Visual Studio for Mac and it's a preview. I don't know where it is because it's disappeared after some time. Good. So register page. We're gonna look at the register page, right? Like I'm not gonna focus much on the UI. I'm just gonna show you the UI, that I have overridden the UI to meet my specification and my needs. This is my beautiful UI, right? You can select what kind of user you are, right? I have stretched the button. I have edited these guys to make sure that you read before understanding. I have the validations. You can't just click, you want to submit. I tell you that this is required, all of that, right? So how it works is this. This is the UI, the form that you see here. It gets to be generated for you, but for me, like I said, I have overridden that, right? So this is it. I'm also making use of CS and JavaScript to make sure that the things are working out, right? What happens when you click a button, right? Like I said, there's a little bit of a JavaScript and the CS, right? So there's a code behind, but I'm more curious about the code behind. So number 1, you need to make sure that you allow this whole class to allow anonymous attribute, meaning that anyone who's not authenticated should interact with the register because they are not authenticated. You need to understand that this is going to be called register model. That's the name of the class. Do not change it. Because this is a UI, there's a code behind. Make sure it's a register model. It's going to inherit it from page model. Do not change this. I do have a global variables, meaning that I talk to a database, I talk to a manager that manages the users, and I talk to a manager that manages the sign in. What happens after you create the account, right? I talk to the external service, which is after that we want to send the email, right? It's a send email service. Then I have a construction to use a dependency injection to resolve those guys, right? Then I have, before, let me close this. There's a very interesting class. It's built in. I have overridden it. It's called register view model, right? So what happens is that apologies. So what happens is that it's gonna take whatever data that the user will enter, what the username is, email, and the password, so forth, right? It will now save them in this class, and I'm gonna make use of it, right? Now for the account types, for this to happen, for you to select this, I'm also using a helper class, which is account types, right? And then for focus area, you see, if you select a content creator, it's going to ask you what is your focus area, right? So all that also is a helper class. I hope you understand these additional classes. So then I use a select list for you to select it. Like you see, I'm going to focus on driver's license. So that's a select list, right? And then this attribute bind property. It's going to take this register view model, and it's going to map each and everything. Whatever you typed here, whatever you typed there, it's going to be binded to this whole property, right? Then there's an onGet. So onGet method is very simple. What it does, it says, listen, when you click register, you are executing onGet, right? Which is this guy. It's gonna reset everything. It's gonna become blank. Or you can even just type this URL, or you can bookmark it. What it does is going to execute it onGet, and you can do whatever you want to do. The most important thing is going to be this. Return the page. So I do a whole lot of things, such as a populate register page, right? So populate, it's something that has to do with I'm populating what these guys with the data, right? So that's what happens. You populate those selected views, right? Good. So these are my private helper methods. And then you have, when the user is ready to submit, you have on post async. Now this one I do a whole lot, including validation, right? So I check, hey, before you submit, did you at least choose what kind of a user you are creating account as, right? You have to choose. If that, it will be sufficient, because this will check. If it doesn't make sense, it's gonna redirect it to page, the same page, but still populating those guys and showing the error message. Then afterwards, I'm just gonna create the user. There's a helper method down here. It's gonna create that instance of a user, save it, and because we need it. After that, it's gonna continue to get the data that you have selected, you know, and then giving us, and then it's gonna go ahead and create the actual account. If the result it succeeded, it's gonna allow you now to add a specific user to a specific role, depending what kind of account type it is. It's gonna trigger send the email confirmation. That means it's gonna send an email to you, and then if the email, I need to change this. It's supposed to be was email sent. If the email was sent, if email was not sent, that means it's fault. It's gonna say register confirm, right? Then type 1. Other than that, if the email was sent, it's gonna go to register confirm of type 2. That means there's another page, and then I'm gonna talk about this one in part 3, right? What is the register confirmation? Remember, I'm gonna talk about all these pages. What is the purpose behind it? Listen, we can talk about all of this, but if there are issues, it's going to tell us about the issues, right? And if something went wrong, it's still going to tell us about it. Something went wrong, that you need to add more information. Other than it's going to return the page. But the most important thing is you need to learn stuff like redirect it to a page. How do you go back to another page? I can teach you all of this for 25 Rand per session. That session is an hour long using Microsoft Teams. Any day from Monday to Friday. For a full hour, you can ask me questions on how I build license handy tips. It's already out there in production, but I would love to teach you how I build it. Sounds good? Until next time.